If the government or NASA had said to you that the Earth is stationary, imagine that. And then imagine we are trying to convince people that no, it's not stationary. It's moving forward at 32 times rifle bullet speed and spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. We would be laughed at. We would have so many people telling us, "You're crazy. The Earth is not moving." We would be ridiculed for having no scientific backing for this convoluted moving Earth theory. And not only that, but then people would say, "Oh, then how do you explain a fixed, calm atmosphere and the sun's observable movement? How do you explain that?" Imagine saying to people, no, the atmosphere is moving also, but is somehow magically velcroed to the moving Earth. The reason is not simply because the Earth is stationary. So what we are actually doing is what makes sense. We are saying that the moving Earth theory is nonsense. The stationary Earth theory makes sense, and we are being ridiculed. You've got to picture it being the other way around to realize just how ridiculous this situation is. This theory from the government and NASA that the Earth is rotating and orbiting and leaning over and wobbling is absolute nonsense. And yet people are clinging to it tightly, like a teddy bear. They just can't bring themselves to face the possibility that the Earth is stationary, though all the evidence shows it. We feel no movement. The atmosphere hasn't been blown away. We see the sun move from east to west. Everything can be explained by a motionless Earth without bringing in all these assumptions to cover up previous assumptions gone bad. If you find from your own experience that something is a fact and it contradicts what some authority has written down, then you must abandon the authority and base your reasoning on your own findings. So investigate the subject for yourself and ask questions. As it is said to spin around its axis at a speed of 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, whilst traveling 67,000 miles per hour in circles around the sun, which is allegedly spiraling at 500,000 miles per hour around the Milky Way, with the galaxy itself rocketing through the universe at an appalling 670 million miles per hour from an alleged cosmogenic explosion almost 14 billion years ago. Now consider that there are centuries-old sundials in the world, which still reliably tell time to the present day, some down to the precise minute. Further consider that the constellations and their countless descriptions in ancient inscriptions, texts, and star charts are exactly the same as in present day. If the Earth ball and all the stars were indeed shooting through the universe at the immense speeds described, then the stellar bodies should not even be as remotely as unchanging as they are. In fact, we should have a constantly changing night sky, with some stars moving obviously faster than others. Now, consider that the distance to Polaris is said to be 2 trillion miles. Here's a visual representation of that number. Now, try to comprehend this distance, and then ask yourself, with the wobble, rotation, and revolution of the Earth alone, how is it possible for such a distant object to stay so perfectly aligned in the same point of our sky for all our recorded history? Rather, Polaris should in fact have a trajectory of his own. Furthermore, on the ball Earth, Polaris shouldn't be visible from anywhere south of the equator, as you'd have to be looking through the curvature of the Earth to do so. However, Polaris can be seen from as far south as 20 degrees south latitude and even further. In fact, there are so many constellations which can be seen much farther than expected, assuming the Ball Earth model. For instance, Ursa Major, right next to Polaris, can be seen from the North Pole all the way south to 30 degrees south latitude. Vulpecula can be seen from the North Pole to as far south as 55 degrees south latitude, whilst Taurus, Pisces, and Leo all can be seen from the North Pole to as far south as 65 degrees south latitude. Of course, none of this is possible assuming the Ball Earth model, but some even more extreme examples are Aquarius and Libra, which can be seen from 65 degrees north latitude to 90 degrees south latitude. Virgo is visible from 80 degrees north latitude to 80 degrees south latitude, and Orion can be seen from 85 degrees north latitude all the way to 75 degrees south latitude. These are all only possible because hemispheres are not actually parts of a sphere, but rather concentric rings around the central pole above which the stars rotate. So investigate the subject for yourself and ask questions.
Gee, I always thought they were balls of gas burning billions of miles away.
Pumbaa, with you, everything's gas.
Simba, what do you think?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, come on,
well,
give,
come on,
give,
Simba,
Simba.
come on.
We told ours. Please.
Well,
Give?
somebody once told me that the great kings of the past are up there, watching over us.
Really?
You mean a bunch of royal dead guys are watching us? Who told you something like that?
Yeah.
What mook made that up? Oh,
Yeah, pretty dumb, huh?
oh you're killing me, son.
Software and realizing that the azimuthal equidistant map, which is the commonly used flat earth map, and the globe, like all the globes that we see and most of the images of Earth that we see are both derived from the Mercator map. So here's how they both work. And that got me thinking, all these differences we've been noticing in NASA's representation of the Earth that they've given us recently, it makes you wonder how they fucked it up. Like the technology, this 3D technology has been around for a long time, and they would have been able to do it without the graphic projection, just using straight maths since the 60s, no doubt. So this 2012 globe sticks out like dog's balls, and also in 2012 you had the Felix Baumgartner jump, which, as we all know, is shot with a wide-angle lens, a fisheye lens, causing the horizon to curve to a ridiculous degree. So again, that sticks out like dog's balls. Also in 2012 you had NASA releasing this Grail footage of the moon, which quite frankly is terrible. Like, it's pretty bad, you gotta admit. So yeah, what's up with
a map that looked like this before? How many of you have ever seen this map?
Seen that map?
Yeah. Isn't this the map that you use K through 16 in the United States of America? Now, folks, look at this map. According to your social studies teacher, what is the equator?
Right
An
down
imaginary
there.
line where?
Yeah.
Around the center of the Earth. Then if this map is correct, then the equator must be here, and Chicago has a tropical climate. Now, folks, this is the map that we use in the schools. Look where the United States is, in the middle of the world, right? Now, here's the USSR, which is no more, of course, Mongolia, China, Africa, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Now, look over here. USSR, Mongolia, China, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Twin Indias here. We have two Indias. Did you know that? Now, people, this is a flat-out lie. Look at the size of Greenland and the size of South America. According to your social studies teachers, what were continents? Largest land masses on the face of the earth, right? Now, do you know the continents? Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, Europe, North America, and South America. Did I say Greenland? Well, Greenland isn't a continent, but it's a huge landmass according to this map, right? The map is a flat-out lie, people. If you read the legend on the map, here it says, in fact, South America is actually 9 times larger than Greenland. Now, look at this map. The equator on this map is down here. All the white countries are larger than they should be, and all the countries of people of color are smaller than they should be. This is a visual image that teaches children a lie. In order to make this map anywhere near accurate, you have to take this over here and put it here like this. Now,
yeah, you ain't seen my best. Checkmate, in a game of chess. Globalists see me as a threat. Free thinking, got the world at my neck, huh? Am I paranoid? Picture Malcolm X in a room full of pigs trying not to bust a sweat. Ayy, Neil Tyson need to loosen up his vest. They probably write that man one hell of a check. Ayy, I'm over here on this side of town. Come on over here, try to clown. Ayy, I'd never pipe down. If they weren't coming for me, then they definitely coming for me now. I can't even keep my phone charged up. All the shit I'm talking, I should get my home barred up. Rappers, get off of my dick and get your own bars up. Vladimir and Liz's breath got the clone skirt, cuz whoop. Use your common sense. Why is NASA part Department of Defense? They divided up the seas into 33 degrees, feeding kids masonry. Bruh, be careful what you read. Flatline. There's no superior bloodline. Flatline. You got me once, but that died. Ayy, voice. Do I have a voice? Do I give a fuck? Do I have a choice? Joint. I roll up a joint. Keep my shooters in the game like I hate to disappoint. I see only good things on the horizon. That's probably why the horizon is always rising. Indoctrinated in a cult called science, and graduated to a club full of liars. Heliocentrism, you were the 6th victim. Fuck you and your team, you can sit on the bench with them, they nervous. But before you try to curve it, do your research on David Irving. Stalin was way worse than Hitler. That's why the POTUS gotta wear a kipper. I'm a man first for an artist. Get a lawyer, look up Dr. Richard Sauter. Bounce. Flatline. You fooled us for the last time. Flatline. There's no superior bloodline there.
So you want to find the farthest point from that center. And it turns out sea level at the equator is farther away from the center of the Earth than sea level near the poles. It has nothing to do with global warming and melting of the ice caps.
Why is that?
Because Earth, we know it spins once a day. Yes, thank you. 3 people know how long a day lasts here.
Good for row number 2. They're off to a great start.
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it kind of flattens out.
Yeah.
Gets wider in the middle. And so Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning. And it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere, it's oblate. And officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
Yeah. Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
Yeah.
So it turns out the pear-shapedness is bigger than the height of Mount Everest above sea level.
Bounce. Flatline. You fooled us for the last time. Flatline. There's no superior bloodline there.
kijken in zoveel landen. Wilt u alsjeblieft terugkeren naar de stoel en nagaan of uw handbagage veilig is opgegooid. In de bagageruimte boven het hoofd of onder de stoel voor. Wilt u alsjeblieft de tafels opklappen, de stoelleuning rechtop zetten, het
that although the materials used both in the Egyptian boats and in the Andean boats are not suitable for sailing on the open seas, the design that is incorporated in these boats could only have been evolved by a people with a long and solid tradition of oceanic navigation, people who needed boats that could cut through high waves and breakers. And the suggestion is, could this design be a very ancient legacy that was passed down and received both by the Egyptians and by the peoples of the Andes and expressed in the kind of boats that they made. In both areas, such boats are associated with the gods. The ancient Egyptians called their gods the Niteru, and they said that they had come from a land far away to the south, a land called Ta-Niteru, across vast expanses of ocean. So whoever they may have been, these gods, above all else, were navigators and seafarers. And navigators and seafarers need maps if they're going to sail around the earth. Now this map is a modern map, and I picked it up at the Library of Congress in the United States. It's an azimuthal equidistant projection centered near Cairo. And in common with all modern maps, it incorporates a number of advanced features. It incorporates highly accurate longitudes, and particularly relative longitudes. And it incorporates an advanced map projection. It isn't easy to represent a spherical object, the Earth, on a flat piece of paper, and to do so with a considerable degree of accuracy. And this is a problem that cartography has had to overcome. So we find good map projections which require advanced mathematics and good relative longitudes. Interestingly enough, there's a category of ancient map which also shows these modern features and which doesn't fit with the received view of the development of human history. One of the most famous of these maps is the Piri-Reis map. And I'm showing it here because I want to compare the projection of this map with the projection here centered on Cairo. Notice the west coast of Africa and the east coast of South America, and coming down here to the Antarctic Peninsula, tonguing up towards the south of South America. It's that precise projection that we find on this 1513 map. Again, there's the west coast of Africa, the east coast of South America. And coming down here, we find a representation of the northern Antarctic Peninsula. In 1513, when Piri-Reis drew the map, Antarctica had not been discovered. In fact, it wasn't discovered until 1818 by our civilization. So there immediately is one anomaly on this map. And another anomaly is the mathematics used in the map projection. And a third anomaly is that it incorporates highly accurate relative longitudes. To do longitudes accurately on maps requires a chronometer, a marine chronometer that will keep accurate time at sea. And again, this was something that our civilization couldn't do until the late 18th century. So this map, fragmentary though it is, appears to incorporate many features that are not supposed to have been known about in 1513. Piri-Reis explains why in these texts that he wrote on the map. He was a Turkish admiral, and he wrote these texts on the map. And what they say is that the map is not his own work. It's a work of synthesis. It's based on more than 20 earlier source maps, that he put all these maps together and derived his own map from these. And unfortunately, the source maps that Piri-Reis used have not survived. Is it possible that the advanced features of this map originate in those lost source maps, which Piri-Reis told us went back in some cases to before the time of Christ and had come from the long-lost library of Alexandria in Egypt? Another strange thing about the appearance of Antarctica on this map, it's been studied by US Air Force cartographers, and their view is that what we're actually seeing there is the subglacial topography of Antarctica. Antarctica as it looks underneath the ice that now covers it. And this raises the question, how long has Antarctica been covered with the 2-mile thick ice cap that we now presently see on it? Such questions would be irrelevant if there were no other maps in this category. If the Piri-Reis map stood alone, the most sensible thing to do would be to dismiss it as a coincidence. But it doesn't stand alone. There's hundreds of other maps that incorporate this same information at a time when our civilization had not yet acquired that information. This is the Mercator map. Mercator is rather famous for his Mercator projection that still dominates most atlases today. It's a 16th century map, and it shows Antarctica 300 years before Antarctica was discovered. And again, it's based on earlier source maps, and again, it incorporates accurate relative longitudes. So also the Orontius Phineus map that we're looking at here, another 16th century map. Mercator includes it in one of his atlases. And here we see Antarctica looking a little bit different, with mountains clearly visible along the coast and rivers running down from those mountains in places where great glaciers are known to run today. It looks on this map as though Antarctica is partially deglaciated. The center of the continent appears to be featureless and ice-covered, but the coast is showing these unglaciated features. What might that mean? This is a map by Philippe Bouache, an 18th century geographer, still a good 100 years before the discovery of Antarctica. And it shows the continent as a kind of archipelago, two major land masses divided by a clear waterway running between them. I wonder where he got that idea from. There's a redrawing of the Mercator map and the Orontius Phineus map and the Bouache map. And here to the right, based on seismic surveys conducted in International Geophysical Year in 1958, is a view of what Antarctica actually looks like underneath all that ice that now covers it. We're looking at the subglacial landscape of Antarctica here. And while I wouldn't claim for a moment that the Bouache map is a perfectly accurate representation of the subglacial topography of Antarctica, I think it's much too close to the reality to be dismissed entirely. I think that much more research needs to be done into these anomalous early maps and into the source maps that they rely upon for their information, because we just may be looking at the faint fingerprints of a lost civilization, of a navigating, seafaring civilization that explored and mapped the entire globe long before what we call history began. The issue of the glaciation of Antarctica is a controversial one, and most scholars would say that it has been covered with ice in the form that we see it today for several millions of years. But there is some contradictory evidence, deep-sea cores which bring up soils from the ocean bed, which suggest that rivers carrying fine-grained sediments were indeed running down off the coastline of Antarctica until about 10,000 years ago. Maybe that's the period we should be looking at. Maybe something happened in the world around then that we don't fully understand. And in my view, this whole mystery is intimately connected to the mystery of the last ice age and what an ice age is and why the last ice age came suddenly and traumatically to an end at around 12 or 14,000 years ago. You have ice sheets, 6 million square miles of ice covering northern Europe, 2 miles thick as far south as London. You have a similar mass of ice covering much of North America, as far south as the Mississippi Delta, almost into the tropics. This ice is stable for 100,000 years. And then suddenly, almost in the blink of an eye, it all melts. Within just 1,000 or 2,000 years, it's all gone. Sea levels have gone up by 400